Jeffrey Wright plays Roebuck Wright in the French Dispatch of the Liberty, Kansas Evening Sun. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby. And I wanted to ask you, Jeffrey, to kick things off by saying, do students of the stage dream of performances?
They may dream of words like that. I think they may dream of scripts like the one that I was gifted with from Wes Anderson and got a chance to play in this movie. It was one of the most beautiful pieces of writing that I have had the good fortune to be asked to play. So I think if they dream of anything, they dream of good words, and that's what I got.
Mm. This is your first Wes Anderson film that you've worked on. What was it about those words and this performance that was sort of that maybe a challenge, but also a joy for you to get right?
Well, it's an immense challenge to work with Wes. It's a great joy, but he's a very challenging filmmaker, very challenging director. And I think he chooses people to work with for specific reasons, but I think one of those reasons is he wants to pull as much out of them as he possibly can. And so he wrote this piece, I guess, with me in mind. And as he described it to me, he thought there might be, only a few other people who could pull it off. And I don't know, if I think I did manage to give him something that he was quite pleased with. But it was the challenge with working with Wes is that he's very exacting. He very specific. He's got a grand and highly detailed vision that he wants to realize, and he wants you to help him realize. And he's also a filmmaker who's highly visual, but also highly verbal. So his love of language comes through in his filmmaking, I think, in a way that's almost singular now. Film is so much about kind of paring down language and honing it to a very efficient dialogue at times. And Wes is more concerned with the flow of language and poetry and imagery through language as well as through the camera. But the language is pretty taxing. But at the same time, it's what I very much enjoy doing. I think it has to do with his appreciation for theater and for theater actors as well, or actors who have come from the theater. He treats the camera frame in many ways like a proscenium, like a stage, and he asks you to perform on it. And it's not, as we've come to understand, it's not necessarily hyperrealism. It's not something that you're going to see out on the streets, but it's it's an act. It's a behavior and language and visuals that are specific to his signature filmmaking. And so it asks a little bit of you, but it's super fun, super gratifying to be a part of and to pull off, because it takes a lot, not only from him and from the actor, but from everyone who's on the set, the crew, the dolly grip, Sanjay, everyone pulling together to make this dance work.
Well, I heard like Alexander Desplat, who does the music for the film, said it was sort of like being part of a collective artwork. And really that is something with Wes's films, there's such ensemble pieces, and you are really like part of this big collective, something that's much bigger than any individual performance. Sort of how do you go about like contributing to that sort of collective artwork, and how does sort of collaboration work?
Well, for one, you know where you are, and you look around and you see who you're working with, and yes, it's a traveling circus, and you have like some of the best clowns in the business who are gathered together to pull it off, and jugglers and acrobats and and all the rest. But it's very much you very much have a sense of being in this thing together, and being there on behalf of the vision of Wes's vision. And so everyone comes with that in mind. And as you probably heard, he creates a great sense of community and cohesion when we all stay in the same place, the same hotel. We eat dinner together. We watch movies together. We kind of gather in this this camp Wes Anderson, and put on these stories. So there's never a sense that any one individual is larger than the other. There's always a sense that we're doing it for the collective. I will say though that I had a chance to see the film again. My daughter hadn't seen it, and I'd seen it at a film festival, and I'd seen it maybe a couple of years ago when we were initially about to release it. And the first time I watch anything, I generally tend to be hyper self-critical, and I can barely see what's going on because I'm too busy kind of examining all the things that I might have done differently in the performance. But this third time I watched it with my daughter, I was able to take it in. And it's it's an incredibly dense film. There's so much information being delivered. And yes, it is this massive ensemble, huge range of characters from disparate parts of this this town of Ennui. But at the same time, there's something very personal about this film, personal for the characters within it. And I also think it's very personal for Wes. In some ways, I saw it almost, even though he's examining the lives of other writers that he's referencing, and of course it's homage to the New Yorker, but there's something in this film, I think, that's autobiographical as well. And that was really moving to me. You have Benicio del Toro, who's playing this artist who's, at times literally tortured, metaphorically tortured, and being asked for more. And I saw parts of the artist's story there, parts of Wes's story there, perhaps. There's the story of that Frances McDormand oversees with Timothée Chalamet, and this young, idealistic revolutionary who's full of youthful vision and aspiration. And that too, I saw something of Wes in that. And then my story, which is about an expat who leaves America for France, as most of the writers do, and trying to find some other part of himself that he might better explore there than in his home country. And I saw something of Wes in that as well. And so, yes, big story, lots of moving parts, but there's something I think very central to who he is as an artist, as an individual, that's being told here as well.
Well, you just said, like, the first time you watch something, you can be sort of, a bit critical and focus in on your own performance, which is interesting because your character in the film says that self-reflection's a vice best conducted in private or not at all. What was your reflection on, like, how did you reflect on your own performance?
I think I think, that's true. Best conducted in private or best conducted in public, but secretly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But behind the veil, without necessarily admitting it.
Would you like to publicly reflect on your performance in the film?
Oh God, no. not so much so. You know, I tend to think and hope that there's not much more that I can say that will illuminate anything about the performance more than the performance itself, whether it's good or bad. I think they tend to speak most most fluently by themselves and for themselves. But I just I just fell in love with this character, with this man, with this odd man out, you know, searching for a bit of freedom and a bit of dignity um, in himself, but in a place, you know, away from home. I just fell in love with the tone of the story and the tone of the language and the irony and just the fluidity of the language. You know, I just try to put the joy and the love that I found inside the writing into the character and put it out there. You know, the weird thing though, one thing I will say, you know, beyond all that, is that the film in some ways is about aloneness, and my story is no exception. About a man who's fine with finding his own corner of the world, corner of the room, corner table, a meal, himself, and something of beauty set before him by an artist, by a chef, for him to consume. And in that, he finds a degree of peace. And when we did the film, I kind of recognized that there was those elements at the center of this character. And I tried to play those notes. But I think it was after we were delayed, after you know, the lockdowns that accompanied this ongoing pandemic, that I really had greater appreciation for that element of the story. And I think audiences, I think audiences have responded to some degree to that as well. Because I think we've all had to experience ourselves alone, much more so than we might ordinarily have done, where it hadn't been for the unexpected circumstances that we find ourselves in these past couple of years. And so it's interesting that you say that, because the film and the character resonates to me now in the times that we exist in now, in a way that it didn't in the before times.
Yeah.
So it's odd or interesting that a thing can change by the circumstances around it. I guess it's like a quantum idea or something like that. It changes as the environment changes, or as it's observed in a different way. I don't know, but it certainly happened with this.
And this is your first, I believe this is your first, is this your first time acting again with Bill Murray since Broken Flowers?
Yeah.
What was that like? Connecting back up with him?
I had forgotten how much I enjoyed working with Bill. And I don't mean simply because he's one of the funniest humans on the planet and he's a character and all of that. Because in fact, when we worked together on Broken Flowers, we kind of didn't see eye to eye for a couple of reasons. But on that was when the cameras weren't rolling. But when the cameras rolled, we just had an understanding. We had a mutual understanding, and there was an ease, and I understood. I understood that we were in the same place together. We just saw things quite clearly together, and I had forgotten that. And I think when I got back together with him on this, it was it was a really wonderful reminder. We sat together in this scene, and afterwards I said to him, man, I said, wow, I'd forgotten how much I love working with you. Unlike, he's really generous. He's a really generous actor, and there's no strangeness that gets in the way. It's just really about here's this, I'm going to give this to you, and in exchange the idea is, well, I'll give that back to you. And it's really very very gentle and open, and super cool. It's super cool, and it's you don't find it often. I love working with him.
Did you have a favorite moment or line in the film?
A favorite moment in the film? There's so many favorite moments in that film. I think my favorite moment from a personal perspective, though, was working with this woman who has very few lines, if any, that end up in the film. But she plays Matthew Almatic's mother, plays Mathieu's mother. And I'm looking across the table at this woman. She's in the first dining sequence. And I thought, I'm talking to her, and she's got this kind of strength to her and gravitas and groundedness. And and I thought she must be some like grand dame of the, the French theater, of the Parisian theater, or something like this. And turns out that Wes had in the casting folks had found her standing in the queue and in line at a pharmacy somewhere in town in Angoulême. But she was the most beautiful, I thought. She had the most beautiful, like kind of radiant, strong face, and she just kind of exuded this grace about her. And I just enjoyed, maybe that's one of my favorite because it would be unexpected. I just enjoyed the time spent with her and playing off of her, and in the kind of subtle ways that we did. But I mean, there were any number of things. Just working in that town of Angoulême was a real joy. Beautiful provincial town near Bordeaux. That, and at the end of the day, returning back to the hotel to some nice cheese and wine. It was all good. Any manner of great favorite moments with it.
Well, the chef says to you near your character towards the end of the film that a new flavor is a rare thing. What was something that was rare and special about this performance?
You would like me to tell you what was rare and special about my performance?
Yeah.
Well, let's where do I begin?
Or the experience, or
no, the thing that was rare and special for me about the experience, about it, was again just the words, the script, the story, just the delicate nature of the storytelling and the intricate architecture of the storytelling and of the writing, the specificity, the syntax, the structure of the language. I just thought it was the most beautiful stuff. And when I first read it, Wes and I met in Paris. I happened to be over there, and my agent had said they, wanted, Wes had this idea and he wanted to talk to me, and so we got together at a cafe in Saint-Germain, and he sat and described the character as this kind of homage to James Baldwin and A.J. Liebling, who was a writer for food critic for the New Yorker. He also mentioned Tennessee Williams, and that they're this kind of, kind of Frankensteinian mix of these people as the references for this character. And he gave me the script later, but it was, in some ways, it was appropriate that we met at this place. This was a place where James Baldwin had written, for example, this cafe. But when he sent me the script a couple of weeks later, I read it, and it immediately seeped into my head like a melody that that you hear on the radio that you hadn't heard before, but it just stays with you. And I read it the first time, and it was not only the story, it was the journey of this man at that time in the mid 50s in America, with all that was going on. This man searching for some degree of space away from the turmoil here, and it was his love of food and the way he described food and the way he viewed his writing about food as an attempt to kind of transcend the vulgarity of things outside the table. And it was the poetry within the writing and the irony, but also the melancholy. There was so much in those words that it just stayed with me. And mostly when I work, if I work on a piece, I can, I'll do a scene and almost immediately delete it from my hard drive. It's gone. But even still, and it's been 3 years now, that I can, that the words are still in my head. I just loved playing them so much that that I think distinguishes this from much of the other, not all, but much of the other work that I'm asked to do. It was just a gorgeous, beautifully considered piece of writing.
Well, there's wonderful words to end on, Jeffrey. And we're an awards website, and this performance is doing very well with some of the Critics Awards around the circuit, and all the best of luck for the upcoming Oscar nominations and everything else for the film. And also, people watching this interview can go to goldderby.com to make your own award predictions and join the discussion in our forums. Jeffrey, it's always such a pleasure to talk with you about film and TV.
Well, Matt, yeah, man, good to gather with you again, and I'll see you down the line.